Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on this video. Real quick before we start, if this story makes you question everyone around you, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and if you've ever been to Alaska. I always wonder who understands just how isolated those waters really are. Alright, let's get into it. My name is Tyler Chadwick. I served in the United States Coast Guard from 2000 to 2008, stationed primarily in Southeast Alaska. I was an electronics technician second class, ET2. I fixed radios, navigation systems, radar equipment. I wasn't a rescue swimmer. Wasn't a boarding team member. Just a tech who kept the equipment running on our cutter. I'm telling you this because what happened in October 2003 didn't happen to some elite military unit. It happened to regular Coast Guard personnel doing a routine rescue mission. It happened to people like me, people who weren't trained for combat, people who weren't prepared for what we found. I've kept this secret for 21 years, signed papers, made promises, watched the nightmares slowly poison every relationship I've had since. But I'm done hiding. The men who disappeared on that ship deserve to have their story told. And the things that took their place are still out there. This is what really happened on the Northern Star in October 2003, and why the Coast Guard will never admit what's really in Alaska's waters. It started with a distress call that wasn't a distress call. October 12, 2003. I was aboard the USCGC Anacapa, a 110-foot patrol boat operating out of Juneau, Alaska. We were on routine patrol in the Inside Passage, that maze of channels and islands between the mainland and the Pacific. Beautiful country. Ancient forests coming right down to the water. Mountains rising straight up from the sea. And a kind of isolation that most people will never experience. The Inside Passage is protected water, relatively calm, but it's also one of the busiest maritime routes in Alaska. Commercial fishing vessels, cargo ships, cruise ships in summer, and in October, with winter approaching, mostly just fishing boats trying to get in one more run before the worst weather arrived. Our crew was 18 people, the captain, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, a good officer, former rescue swimmer who'd saved dozens of lives in her career, the XO, Lieutenant James Park, navigation specialists, enginemen, deckhands, and me, keeping the electronics running. We'd been on patrol for 6 days. Nothing unusual. A few radio checks with passing vessels, one medical evacuation from a fishing boat, a kayaker who'd gotten separated from his group and needed a tow. Standard Coast Guard work. Routine. Safe. Then, on October 12th, at approximately 14:30 hours, we received a mayday call. It came from the Northern Star, a commercial fishing vessel registered out of Ketchikan. 65-foot steel-hulled seiner. 12 crew. They'd been working the waters around Prince of Wales Island, one of the largest islands in Southeast Alaska. Remote. Heavily forested. With a Tlingit population that had been there for thousands of years before the first Europeans arrived. The mayday was brief, static-filled. A man's voice, panicked, saying they'd hit something. Were taking on water. Needed immediate assistance. Then the transmission cut off. Captain Mitchell ordered us to respond. We were maybe 20 miles from the Northern Star's last known position. At our top speed of about 28 knots, we could be there in under an hour. She also notified the Coast Guard Command Center in Juneau and requested additional assets if needed. As I was plotting the Northern Star's position on our navigation system, I noticed something. They were in water that local fishing boats usually avoided, not because it was dangerous. The charts showed adequate depth, no major hazards, but because it was considered bad luck. I'd been in Alaska long enough to know that when locals avoided an area without a clear reason, you paid attention. Alaska has places, areas where things happen, where boats disappear, where people go missing. The old-timers won't always tell you why. They just tell you to stay away. The Northern Star hadn't stayed away. We reached their position in 43 minutes, and we found them. The Northern Star was right where their GPS had placed them. Floating. Engines running. All lights on. No visible damage. No sign of distress. The vessel looked completely operational. "Anacapa to Northern Star," Captain Mitchell called over the radio. "We received your mayday call. What is your status?" Static. Then a voice. Calm. Almost cheerful. "Anacapa, this is Northern Star. Not sure what you're talking about. We're all good here. No mayday. False alarm, maybe?" Mitchell and I exchanged a look. That wasn't right. Someone had made that mayday call. I'd heard it. Recorded it. A man's voice screaming about taking on water. "Northern Star, we have your mayday call recorded. Are you saying you did not transmit a distress signal?" Another pause. "Must have been someone else, Anacapa. We're fine. All crew accounted for. No damage. Just working our nets. Appreciate you checking, though." The voice was wrong. I couldn't explain how. The words were right. The tone was friendly. But something underneath was off, like someone reading lines without understanding what they meant. "Northern Star, Coast Guard regulations require we conduct a safety inspection after a distress call. We'll be boarding to verify your status." Longer pause this time. "That won't be necessary, Anacapa. Like I said, we're fine. It's not a request, Northern Star. Prepare to be boarded." No response. The radio went silent. We pulled alongside. The boarding team consisted of Lieutenant Park, Petty Officer Rodriguez, Seaman Harris, and me. I wasn't usually part of boarding teams, but our regular electronics tech was on leave, and Mitchell wanted someone who could check their radio equipment to see if there'd been a malfunction. As we approached in our small boat, I got my first good look at the Northern Star's crew. They were on deck. All of them. 12 men standing at the rail, watching us approach. Not moving. Not talking to each other. Just standing there. Watching. "That's weird," Rodriguez muttered. "They're just staring." He was right. Normal crew behavior when the Coast Guard boards is busy activity. People securing gear, preparing paperwork, going about their work while staying out of the way. But these guys were just standing there. Silent. Still. Like mannequins. We pulled up to the boarding ladder. The crew made space, but didn't help us. Didn't offer hands. Didn't say a word. Just watched with expressions I couldn't read. I climbed aboard, and the smell hit me immediately. Not fish. Not diesel. Not the normal smells of a working fishing boat. This was something else. Damp, musty, like rotten vegetation mixed with something organic and wrong. It was faint, but it was there. "Captain Mitchell, this is boarding team," Lieutenant Park radioed. "We're aboard Northern Star. Crew appears healthy. Vessel appears operational. Conducting inspection now." "Copy that. Keep me informed." Park turned to the nearest crew member. Older guy, maybe 50. Gray beard, weathered face, name tag said Morrison. "Are you the captain?" Park asked. The man nodded slowly, didn't speak, just nodded. "Sir, we received a mayday call from this vessel approximately 1 hour ago. Someone reported hitting something and taking on water. Was that you?" Morrison's face didn't change expression. His eyes looked at Park but seemed to focus somewhere past him. "No mayday," he said. His voice was flat, monotone. "We are fine. Can I see your radio log?" Morrison turned and walked toward the wheelhouse. His gait was odd, stiff, like someone walking who wasn't used to walking. The rest of the crew remained at the rail, still watching us, still silent. Rodriguez leaned close to me. "Something's really wrong here, man. These guys are acting like zombies." I nodded. I felt it too. That crawling sensation on the back of your neck when you know something's wrong but can't identify what. We followed Morrison into the wheelhouse. The interior was immaculate. Too immaculate. Working fishing boats are messy. Gear everywhere. Coffee cups. Charts spread out. The detritus of men living and working in a small space for days at a time. This wheelhouse looked like it had been cleaned recently. Everything in its place. Nothing out of order. Even the smell of rotten vegetation was weaker in here, overwhelmed by cleaning products. Morrison pointed to the radio console. "Check." I sat down and started examining the equipment. Standard marine radio, nothing fancy. I checked the logs. The last transmission was from yesterday morning, a routine check-in with the harbor master in Ketchikan. Nothing after that. Certainly nothing that would have triggered the mayday call we'd received. But I was the one who'd received the call. I'd heard it. It had come from this vessel. I pulled up the radio's internal memory, and I found something. A transmission had been made today at 14:25 hours, right around the time of the mayday, but it had been deleted from the log. Someone had erased it. "Lieutenant," I said quietly, "there was a transmission. Someone deleted it from the records." Park's hand moved to his sidearm. We were armed for boarding operations. Standard procedure. But this was the first time I'd seen Park actually rest his hand on his weapon during a routine inspection. "Captain Morrison, why was a transmission deleted from your radio log?" Morrison looked at him with those empty eyes. "No deletion. No mayday. We are fine. I'm looking at the internal memory right now. A transmission was made and then erased. Why?" Morrison's face remained expressionless. "Equipment malfunction, maybe. We are fine." Park glanced at me. I could see the calculation in his eyes. Something was very wrong here. But what? The crew was acting strange, but they weren't threatening. The vessel was operational. There was no visible evidence of distress. What grounds did we have to detain them? Then we heard it. Faint. Coming from somewhere below deck. A sound that made my blood run cold. Children crying, soft, distant. The unmistakable sound of a child sobbing. Maybe two children coming from below. "You have kids on board?" Park demanded. Morrison's face didn't change. "No children." The crying continued. Clearer now, definitely children, young, scared. "Those are children," Park said. "Where are they?" "No children," Morrison repeated. His voice was still flat, still emotionless, like he was reciting a fact he'd memorized. Park drew his weapon. "Everyone stay here. Chadwick, Rodriguez, with me. Harris, watch these people." We moved toward the stairs leading below deck. The crying was louder now, multiple voices. Children calling for help, calling for their mothers. The sound was heartbreaking, urgent. But it was also wrong. The acoustics were off. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. Not from a specific location below, but from the walls themselves. From the structure of the ship. We descended into the crew quarters. Bunks for 12 men, personal belongings, clothes, photos. Everything you'd expect. But no children. The crying was all around us, but there was no source. "What the hell is that?" Rodriguez whispered. I checked the bunks more carefully, and I saw something. Above each bunk, hidden behind the mattress where you wouldn't see it unless you looked closely, was a small carved figure. Wood. Maybe 3 inches tall. Stylized animals. Otters. Each carving had been wrapped in what looked like cedar bark and tied with fishing line. They'd been placed deliberately, hidden, like someone was trying to protect themselves. "These are Tlingit protection charms," I said. "The crew put these here. They were scared of something." Park grabbed one of the carvings. The moment he did, the crying stopped. Instant silence, like someone had flipped a switch. We stood in that silence for a long moment. Then Park's radio crackled. "Lieutenant, something's happening up here." We ran back up to the deck. Harris was backed against the rail, weapon drawn. The crew of the Northern Star had moved. They were no longer at the rail. They were arranged in a semicircle around Harris, not threatening exactly, but surrounding him, closing in slowly. "They just started moving," Harris said. His voice was shaking. "All at once, like they were controlled." Morrison was at the front of the group. His face was still expressionless, but now I could see his eyes clearly. And they were wrong. The pupils were too large, too dilated, and they reflected the light like an animal's eyes. "We need to leave," Park said quietly. "Back to the boat. Now." "Lieutenant Park," Morrison said. His voice had changed. No longer flat. Now it had an edge. Something predatory underneath. "You cannot leave. We're Coast Guard. We can board and leave as we see fit. You violated the water. You violated the sites. You must stay." The crew moved closer. Their movements were more fluid now, more natural, but still synchronized, like a school of fish moving as one organism. "Everyone back to the boat," Park ordered. "Double time." We moved toward the boarding ladder. The crew matched our movement, staying between us and escape. Harris raised his weapon. "Coast Guard, stand down. Back away from us." They didn't back away. If anything, they moved closer, and their faces began to change. I don't know how to describe it except to say their faces started to shift. The features remained, but the proportions changed, became slightly off, like a mask that didn't quite fit properly. Morrison's jaw elongated. His fingers seemed too long. His eyes reflected light that wasn't there. "What the hell are they?" Rodriguez whispered. Then one of them spoke. But it wasn't Morrison. It was a younger crew member. And he spoke in a language I didn't understand. Guttural, clicking, not human. The others responded in the same language. All of them speaking at once. A chorus of inhuman sounds coming from human mouths. "Move! Now!" Park shoved us toward the ladder. We scrambled down to our small boat. The crew of the Northern Star watched us from the rail, silent again. But now I could see their faces clearly in the afternoon light, and I realized with absolute certainty that these were not the crew of the Northern Star. These were something else, something wearing the crew's faces, something that had learned to look human but hadn't quite perfected it. And we'd just spent 15 minutes trapped on a ship with them. We powered away from the Northern Star, back to the Anacapa. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting them to follow, to pursue. But they just stood at the rail, watching, those two large eyes tracking us across the water. When we pulled alongside the Anacapa, Captain Mitchell was waiting. She took one look at our faces and knew something was wrong. "Report," she ordered. Park climbed aboard. His hand was shaking. I'd never seen Park scared before. Not in training, not in real operations, but he was scared now. "Captain, we have a situation. The crew of the Northern Star is not human." Mitchell stared at him. "Come again?" "They're not human, ma'am. They look human, but they're not. Something's wrong with them, their faces, their eyes, the way they move. They're pretending to be the crew." "Lieutenant, I know how it sounds, Captain, but I'm telling you what we saw. Those are not the men who registered that vessel. There's something else." Mitchell looked at me. "Chadwick?" I nodded. He's right, Captain. I don't know what they are, but they're not human, and they have protection charms hidden throughout the ship. Tlingit carvings. The real crew knew something was wrong. They were trying to protect themselves. Mitchell's face hardened. She'd been Coast Guard for 15 years. She'd seen a lot, but I could tell this was outside her experience, outside anyone's experience. "We need to contact Juneau," she said. "Get guidance on this, and we need to figure out what happened to the real crew." She turned towards the bridge, and that's when we heard it again. The children crying. Faint, coming from the water around our boat, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Captain," Rodriguez said quietly, "we need to leave right now. We need to get far away from here." Mitchell hesitated. Coast Guard officers are trained to rescue people, to help, to investigate. But I could see her instinct warring with her training. Her instinct was telling her the same thing Rodriguez had said. Get away, fast. She made the call. "All hands, prepare to get underway. Maximum speed. We're returning to Juneau." As we powered away from that position, I watched the Northern Star through binoculars. The crew was still on deck, still watching us. But they weren't alone anymore. There were others in the water around the ship. Shapes just below the surface. Dark forms that were too large to be seals. Too coordinated to be fish. Swimming in circles around the vessel like sharks around prey. And on the shore of Prince of Wales Island, maybe half a mile away, I could see figures standing at the tree line. Dozens of them. Human-shaped, but wrong. All facing toward us. All watching. We'd stumbled into something. Something that had been in these waters long before the Coast Guard. Long before the United States. Long before European explorers. Something that knew we'd seen it, and might not let us leave with that knowledge. We made it back to Juneau by nightfall, the fastest run I'd ever been on. Captain Mitchell pushed our engines harder than regulations allowed. Nobody complained. We all wanted distance between us and whatever we'd seen. The debriefing started immediately. Coast Guard investigators, federal agents who didn't identify their agency, even someone from Naval Intelligence who flew in from Seattle. They questioned us separately, took our statements, examined the photos and video from our boarding. The photos were the worst part. When we reviewed the footage from Harris's body camera, we could see what we'd missed in person. The crew's faces flickered, just for frames at a time. The human masks they were wearing slipped, revealing something underneath. Something with elongated features, webbed hands, eyes that reflected light like a cat's. In one frame, Morrison's face was completely wrong. His mouth had too many teeth. His jaw had partially dislocated to accommodate them. Then, in the next frame, he looked human again. "What the hell are we looking at?" the Naval Intelligence officer asked. Commander Blake, 50s, former SEAL. The kind of guy who'd seen everything. "Kushtaka," said a voice from the doorway. We all turned. An elderly Tlingit man stood there. He was maybe 70. Long gray hair in a traditional style. Deep lines in his face that spoke of a life lived on the water. He wore both modern clothes and traditional elements, a blend of two worlds. "Who are you?" Captain Mitchell demanded. "My name is William Marks. I'm a clan elder from Tlingit on Prince of Wales Island. I was asked to come speak with you about what you found." "Asked by who?" Marks smiled slightly. "By people who know there are things in Alaska that the government doesn't understand. By people who have been dealing with the kushtaka for thousands of years. By people who tried to warn you not to go into those waters." He entered the room without permission. Sat down at the briefing table like he owned it. The federal agents looked uncomfortable but didn't stop him. The Northern Star was fishing in forbidden water, Mark said. Water where my people do not go. They were told not to. The company was told not to. But money matters more than wisdom to some people. So they went anyway, and the kushtaka took them. Kushtaka, Commander Blake said. Land otter men, Tlingit folklore, shapeshifters who drown their victims and take their form. Not folklore, Marx corrected. Real. The kushtaka have been in these waters since before the Ice Age. They are neither fully animal nor fully human. They exist in between, and they are territorial. I leaned forward. What happened to the crew? The real crew? Marx looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. The kushtaka took them, drowned them, studied their forms, learned to wear their faces. Those things you saw on that ship, they were kushtaka wearing human skin like clothes, learning how to be human. Why? Mitchell asked. Why would they do that? Because you keep encroaching on their territory. Commercial fishing, cruise ships, drilling for oil, logging. Every year you take more of their waters, more of their land. They're adapting, learning. If they can pass as human, they can move among you, stop you, drive you away. The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. If these things could perfectly mimic humans, they could be anywhere, anyone. How do we stop them? Blake asked. Marx shook his head. You don't. You avoid them. You respect their territory. You listen when the Tlingit people tell you not to go somewhere. That's how you stop them. Not with guns. Not with military force. With respect. We can't just let them keep a fishing vessel, Mitchell said. And what about the real crew? If they're dead, we need to recover the bodies. The bodies won't be found. The kushtaka will have taken them deep, to places where your diving equipment can't reach, to underwater caves where your sonar won't penetrate. They're gone. We have to try, Mitchell insisted. Marx studied her for a long moment. You're going back there, aren't you? No matter what I say. It's my job to investigate what happened, to recover crew if possible. Yes, we're going back. Then you need to know what you're facing. The kushtaka are intelligent, possibly more intelligent than humans. They've survived in these waters for thousands of years by being smarter than everything that tried to hunt them. They can hold their breath for over an hour. They can see in complete darkness. They can mimic any sound they've ever heard perfectly, and they hunt in groups. He pulled something from his pocket. Small, carved figures of otters, similar to what I'd seen on the Northern Star. These are protection, cedar and traditional blessing. They won't stop the kushtaka, but they'll make them uncomfortable, make them think twice before approaching. Wear them, all of you, and don't go in the water, ever. Once you're in their element, you're already dead. He distributed the carvings. I took mine, feeling the smooth wood. It was warm, warmer than it should be. One more thing, Marx said. The kushtaka use children's cries to lure victims. If you hear a child crying, especially near water, it's not a child, it's them. Don't follow the sound, don't investigate, ignore it completely. That's their primary hunting strategy. Children crying. The sound we'd heard on the Northern Star. The sound that had led us below deck. We'd been lured, played, and we'd walked right into it. We'll be more careful, Blake said. Marx looked at him sadly. Careful won't be enough. But good luck, Commander. You're going to need it. He left without another word. We spent 2 days planning the return operation. This time it wouldn't be a routine boarding. It would be a full tactical response. Coast Guard Tactical Boarding Team. Navy EOD specialist in case there were explosives. and a Marine Quick Reaction Force standing by on a nearby vessel. I wasn't supposed to go. I was just a tech. But I'd been on the first boarding. I'd seen them. And Commander Blake wanted someone who could identify anomalies in their behavior, their appearance. So I volunteered. Or maybe I just needed to know, needed to understand what we'd encountered, needed closure. We approached the Northern Star's last known position at dawn on October 15th, 3 days after the first encounter. The sun was rising behind the mountains, painting the water orange and gold. Beautiful, serene, completely at odds with what we were about to face, but the Northern Star wasn't there. We searched the area, extended the search grid, used radar and sonar, nothing. The vessel had vanished. Maybe they moved to different fishing grounds, Lieutenant Park suggested. Or maybe they knew we were coming back, Blake said. Chadwick, you said they showed intelligence on the first boarding. They knew you were Coast Guard. They tried to keep you away. That suggests awareness, planning. He was right. They'd known what we were, had understood that we were there to investigate, had tried to discourage us from boarding. That was intelligent behavior, tactical thinking. Expand the search, Captain Mitchell ordered. They can't have gone far. 3 days maximum travel time from their last position. That gives us a search radius of maybe 150 nautical miles. We searched for 6 hours. Checked every cove, every inlet, every possible anchorage where a fishing vessel might hide. The Marine Reaction Force sent up a helicopter to cover more area. Still nothing. Then, around 1400 hours, we got a call from a Tlingit fishing boat working near Cape Shakon. Coast Guard, this is the Raven's Wing. We found your missing ship, but you're not going to like what we found. We reached their position in 30 minutes. The Raven's Wing was standing off about a quarter mile from shore. And there, run aground on a rocky beach, was the Northern Star. But she was wrong. The vessel had been deliberately beached and torn apart. The wheelhouse was demolished. The deck was covered in debris. The hull had been breached in multiple places. It looked like something had systematically destroyed the ship. And there were no signs of the crew anywhere. We sent a boarding team ashore. I went with them. Blake, Park, Rodriguez, 6 Marines, armed to the teeth, ready for anything. What we found on that beach is something I'll never forget. The Northern Star had been gutted. Everything electronic had been ripped out. The radio, the GPS, the depth finder, all of it torn from their mounts and smashed. Not by water damage, by something with claws. The crew quarters were worse. Every bunk had been shredded, personal belongings scattered, and the Tlingit protection charms we'd seen before were gone. Every single one had been removed. But we also found something else. In the engine room, written on the wall in what looked like fish blood, was a message, in English, perfect English. We are learning. We are changing. Leave our waters, or become like us. Blake stared at the message. They can write, they understand English well enough to write a coherent threat. They've been learning from the crew they took, I said. The real crew had years of experience, knowledge, language, all of that is in their memories. And the kushtaka took those memories when they took their forms. That's not possible, one of the Marines said. Things can't just steal people's knowledge like that. We're looking at the evidence that they can, Blake said quietly. They've been studying us, learning how we think, how we communicate. They're adapting. We searched the entire vessel. No bodies. No signs of struggle beyond the deliberate destruction. It was like the kushtaka had simply abandoned the Northern Star once they'd learned everything they needed from it. But as we were preparing to leave, Rodriguez found something in the water beneath the ship. Sir, you need to see this. He was pointing at the kelp forest just offshore. And in the kelp, barely visible, were shapes. Large shapes, dozens of them, swimming just below the surface, circling the northern star like sharks around a wounded seal. "Are those?" Park started. "Yes," Blake finished. "They're here, watching us. They've been here the whole time." One of the shapes surfaced just for a moment, long enough for us to see. It was humanoid, maybe 7 feet long, covered in dark fur that glistened wet. Its face was elongated, part human, part otter. Its eyes were large and black and fixed on us with clear intelligence. Its hands had webbed fingers ending in claws. It made a sound, a high-pitched clicking, and all around the northern star, other kushtaka surfaced. Dozens of them. Maybe 50. More than I could count. All making the same clicking sound in unison. "They're communicating," I said. "It's a language. They're talking to each other." Then one of them spoke. In English. Perfect English. It sounded exactly like Captain Morrison from the Northern Star. "You will leave now. You will not return. You will tell your people that these waters are ours. If you do not, we will take more of you. We will learn more of you. We will become more like you, until you cannot tell us apart." The threat was clear and terrifying. They weren't just mimicking humans. They were threatening to infiltrate human society, to replace us, to become us. "We're not leaving Alaska," Blake shouted back. "This is United States territory. You don't get to decide who goes where." The kushtaka that had spoken tilted its head. The gesture was almost human, almost curious. "United States. Temporary. We have been here for 10,000 years. We will be here when United States is dust. Leave. Final warning." Then they dove. All of them at once. The water churned, and they were gone. Just like that. Disappeared into the kelp forest. "Get everyone back to the boats," Blake ordered. "Now." We evacuated the Northern Star as fast as we could. Nobody wanted to be on that beach anymore. Nobody wanted to be in those waters. We'd just been threatened by something that shouldn't exist, something that was intelligent enough to communicate, to plan, to threaten. As we powered away from the beach, I looked back one more time. The Northern Star sat on the rocks, broken and abandoned. A warning, a message. And in the tree line, I saw them, dozens of figures, standing upright, watching us leave. They were far enough away that I couldn't make out details, but they were there, on land, not in the water. "They can come ashore," I said. "Blake, they're not just aquatic, they can come on land." Blake followed my gaze, saw them too. His face went pale. "That's not in any of the folklore," he said. "The kushtaka are supposed to be tied to water. That's their limitation. They're not supposed to be able to function on land for extended periods. They're adapting," Park said. "That's what they told us. They're learning, changing. Maybe they've learned to survive on land. Or maybe the folklore was always incomplete." We reported everything to command. The destroyed vessel, the written message, the encounter with the kushtaka, the threat they'd made. And most concerning, the fact that they could operate on land. The response from Juneau was immediate. All Coast Guard vessels were ordered to avoid the Prince of Wales Island area until further notice. The Marine Reaction Force was kept on standby but not deployed, and civilian traffic was quietly discouraged from the region through fishing restrictions and safety warnings. But no official statement was made, no public warning, just quiet measures to keep people away from kushtaka territory. Because how do you tell people that intelligent shape-shifting otter men control part of Alaska? How do you explain that? You don't. You classify it. You bury it, and you hope it doesn't get worse. But it did get worse. Over the next week, 3 more fishing vessels went silent in southeast Alaska, different areas, different circumstances. But all of them within 50 miles of Prince of Wales Island. All of them found later, abandoned or destroyed. No crew, no bodies, no explanation. The kushtaka were expanding their territory, or hunting more aggressively. We didn't know which. But what we did know was that 12 men from the Northern Star were missing, and now potentially 20 more from the other vessels. 32 people gone, taken by something the government refused to admit existed. I asked Blake what would happen next, what the response would be. He told me the truth. Nothing. There will be no response. We can't fight something that can look like anyone, can infiltrate anywhere. The best we can do is contain them, keep people away, monitor the situation, and hope they stay in their territory. What about the missing crew? I asked. Their families deserve answers. They'll be told it was an accident, a storm, equipment failure, something explainable. They'll never know the truth. That's not right. Blake looked at me with tired eyes. No, it's not. But it's necessary. Because the alternative is panic, mass panic about something we can't stop. Something we can't even verify exists by normal scientific methods. So we classify it, bury it, and move on. But we couldn't move on, not really. Because we knew. We'd seen them, talked to them, been threatened by them, and we knew they were still out there, learning, adapting, preparing for something. 3 weeks after the Northern Star incident, I was rotated back to regular duties. No explanation, just orders. One day, I was part of a classified investigation into shape-shifting cryptids. The next, I was back to fixing radar systems and running diagnostics. The official story was complete. The Northern Star and her crew had been lost in a sudden storm. Equipment failure led to the vessel running aground. The crew had attempted to evacuate in life rafts but were lost at sea. Bodies not recovered due to currents and predation. Clean, neat, believable. Completely false. The other vessels that went missing got similar cover stories. Navigation errors, mechanical failures. One was blamed on piracy, which was ridiculous in Alaska waters, but somehow made it into the official report. Anything but the truth. But the truth had a way of leaking out. Not through official channels, through the people who lived in southeast Alaska, the Tlingit communities, the fishing families, the old-timers who'd been working these waters for generations. They knew something was wrong. They'd lost friends and family, and they weren't buying the government's explanations. Whispers started spreading. Stories. Warnings passed from boat to boat, community to community. Stay away from certain waters. Don't fish near Prince of Wales Island. If you hear children crying, run. I tried to put it behind me, tried to focus on my work, but I couldn't stop thinking about those men, the real crew of the Northern Star. 12 people who'd gone to work one day and never came home, who'd been taken by something that shouldn't exist and replaced by perfect copies. Where were their bodies? What had the kushtaka done with them? Did they suffer? Did they know what was happening? The questions ate at me. Every night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Morrison's face flickering. Saw those webbed fingers. Saw dozens of kushtaka circling in the kelp. In December, I got a call from Commander Blake. He'd been reassigned to a joint task force studying anomalous maritime phenomena, government code for cryptids and unexplained occurrences. Basically, they'd created a secret program to track and contain things like the kushtaka. "Chadwick, I need you to come to Seattle," he said. "There's been a development." I flew down on my next leave. Blake met me at a nondescript office building in an industrial area near the port. No signs, no official presence, just another warehouse in a city full of warehouses. Inside was a different story. Computers, monitors, maps covering entire walls showing the Pacific Northwest coastline marked with symbols and notations. This was an intelligence operation. Well-funded, serious. "What is this?" I asked. "Task Force Pacifica," Blake said. "Established quietly in 1987 after a series of unexplained disappearances along the Washington coast. We monitor and investigate anomalous maritime activity. What you encountered in Alaska wasn't the first time. Won't be the last." He led me to a conference room. On the screen was a map of southeast Alaska. Prince of Wales Island at the center, and radiating out from it, red markers indicating incidents. Dozens of them. "Since the Northern Star incident, we've had 47 unexplained disappearances in this region," Blake said. "Fishing vessels, pleasure boats. Even a small Coast Guard patrol boat went silent for 6 hours before reappearing with no explanation from the crew." "The kushtaka are expanding," I said. "We think so, or they're becoming more aggressive. Or there are more of them, we don't know. But the activity is increasing, and that's not the worst part." He pulled up another image. Security camera footage from a dock in Ketchikan. Dated 2 weeks ago, it showed a man walking down the pier, normal-looking, middle-aged, wearing fishing gear. "That's Oliver Webb," Blake said. "Third mate on the Northern Star, one of the missing crew." My blood ran cold. "That's not possible. Webb is dead. The kushtaka took him." "We know. We identified the body 3 days ago. Or rather, what we think is the body. A diver found it in deep water off Prince of Wales Island. Positive ID through dental records. Oliver Webb died sometime in October. So who is this?" He played the footage. The man who looked like Oliver Webb walked to a boat. Spoke with someone. Normal interaction. Nothing unusual. Then he looked directly at the security camera and smiled. The smile was wrong. Too wide, too many teeth. Just for a fraction of a second before he corrected it and made it look human. "They're here," I whispered. "They're not just in their territory anymore. They're infiltrating. Coming into towns, pretending to be people. That's what we think. And Webb isn't the only one. We've had reports of 3 other Northern Star crew members being spotted in different Southeast Alaska communities. All of them confirmed dead. All of them walking around like nothing's wrong. Why? What are they doing?" Blake pulled up more footage. The fake Oliver Webb talking to fishermen. Asking about routes, about schedules, about what areas were being worked, intelligence gathering. They're learning our patterns, our behaviors, our commercial fishing operations. They want to know where we go, when we go there, how we operate. They're conducting reconnaissance. For what? We don't know. But it suggests planning, long-term strategy. They're not just reacting to encroachment anymore, they're preparing for something. I stared at the footage, at the thing wearing Oliver Webb's face, walking among humans, talking, learning, planning. The implications were staggering. "How many are there?" I asked. "How many kushtaka?" "We don't know. Tlingit folklore suggests they live in extended family groups, dozens per group, and there could be multiple groups along the coast, hundreds, maybe thousands. If even a fraction of them can successfully mimic humans, they could infiltrate anywhere. What's the response going to be?" Blake was quiet for a long moment. "There is no response. Task Force Pacifica is purely observational. We monitor, we document, but we don't engage. We can't. The political fallout of admitting these things exist would be catastrophic, and we have no effective way to fight them, so we watch, and we hope they stay contained." That's not good enough, I said. People are dying. More will die. We have to do something. What do you suggest? Military action? Against an enemy that can look like anyone? That has underwater capabilities we can't match? That's been adapting to their environment for thousands of years while we've been here for a few hundred. We'd lose. Badly. He was right. But I hated it. Hated the helplessness. Hated knowing that somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, things were walking around wearing human faces, gathering information, preparing for something we couldn't predict or prevent. There's something else, Blake said. The diver who found Oliver Webb's body, he reported something strange about the discovery site. There were others, dozens of bodies, all in an underwater cave system, all of them missing crew from the various incidents. They were arranged deliberately, almost ceremonially. Where is this site? About 80 feet down, in a cave system that extends under Prince of Wales Island. The diver only saw the entrance. He didn't go deeper, said he saw movement further in, large shapes, and he heard sounds, vocalizations that didn't sound like any marine mammal he'd ever encountered. They have a den, an underwater base. Appears so, and it's extensive. The cave system under Prince of Wales Island is massive, miles of passages. Some of them connect to the surface through sinkholes and underground rivers. Perfect habitat for something that's equally comfortable in water and on land. He brought up a geological survey map. The cave system was highlighted. It looked like a spider web under the island, connecting, branching, creating an entire underground network that humans couldn't access without specialized equipment. They own that island, I said, completely, surface and subsurface. We couldn't clear them out if we wanted to. No, we couldn't, which is why the unofficial policy is containment. Keep people away, monitor their activity. Hope they stay in their territory. It's the best we can do. I left to Seattle that night feeling worse than when I'd arrived. We'd discovered something impossible, something dangerous. And our response was to do nothing. To watch. To document. To let it happen. But I couldn't do nothing. I'd seen those men on the Northern Star, had looked into their eyes and seen something inhuman looking back. I'd been threatened by creatures that shouldn't exist, and I needed to understand them, needed to know more. So I started researching. Everything I could find about the kushtaka, Tlingit folklore, academic studies, eyewitness reports going back centuries. And the more I learned, the more disturbed I became. The kushtaka weren't just animals. They were an intelligent species, parallel to humans, perhaps descended from the same ancestors millions of years ago but diverged, evolved differently, adapted to aquatic life while retaining intelligence and manual dexterity. They had language, culture, possibly even art. The Tlingit described them as having complex social structures, families, clans. They buried their dead, they created tools, they communicated across vast distances using sounds and possibly other methods humans couldn't detect. They were people, non-human people, with their own societies, their own histories, their own territories that we'd been encroaching on for 200 years. And we'd pushed them to the point where they felt threatened enough to start learning to become us, to infiltrate human society, to prepare for what might be an existential conflict. We'd created this situation. We'd ignored the warnings, violated their waters, taken their resources, and now they were adapting, evolving, preparing to fight back in ways we couldn't anticipate or counter. In February 2004, I got orders transferring me to a new duty station, Kodiak, Alaska, further west, away from southeast Alaska, away from Kushtaka territory. The transfer was sudden, no explanation. just orders. I think Blake pulled strings, got me moved for my own safety, because by then I'd become obsessed. I was spending every off-duty hour researching, asking questions, making the kind of noise that gets attention, the wrong kind of attention. The night before I left Juneau, I went down to the harbor. Just wanted to see the water one more time. Say goodbye to Southeast Alaska. Maybe find some closure. I was standing on the dock, looking out at the inside passage, when I heard it. Faint. Distant. Children crying, coming from the water. I knew what it was, knew it wasn't real children, but the sound was so realistic, so heartbreaking. Every instinct screamed at me to investigate, to help, to rescue. I backed away from the water, pulled out the Tlingit carving William Marks had given me months ago. I'd kept it, worn it. Some superstitious part of me believed it helped, and maybe it did. As I backed away, I saw something surface about 50 yards offshore. A head, too large to be human, with eyes that reflected the dock lights, watching me, evaluating. It made a sound, not children anymore, a clicking, questioning maybe. Then it dove. And I saw others, at least 3, maybe more. They'd been in the harbor. In Juneau Harbor. Not in their territory. In ours. They were already infiltrating, already moving into human spaces. Learning. Adapting, preparing. I ran back to my quarters. Didn't stop until I was inside with the door locked. And I swore I'd never go near the water at night again. Not in Alaska, not anywhere. Because they were out there. And they knew about me. Knew I'd seen them. Knew I'd been on the Northern Star. Knew I was asking questions. And I had the terrifying feeling that they'd been about to show me something. Or take me somewhere. Or replace me. I left for Kodiak the next morning. Didn't look back. Didn't say goodbye to anyone. Just got on the plane and flew away from Southeast Alaska as fast as I could. But I couldn't fly away from the knowledge. Couldn't escape what I'd seen. Couldn't forget the real crew of the Northern Star, lying in an underwater cave, arranged like some kind of tribute or warning or promise. They were dead. All of them. And walking around wearing their faces were things that had studied their memories, learned their mannerisms, and perfected their disguises. If they could do that with 12 fishermen, what could they do with a Coast Guard crew? With military personnel? With government officials? How many of them were already among us? I served the rest of my Coast Guard enlistment in Kodiak, and then at stations progressively further from Southeast Alaska. San Francisco. San Diego. Finally, shore duty in Virginia. As far from Kushtaka territory as I could get while staying on the coast. I left the service in 2008. Got a job with a defense contractor doing electronics work. Moved to Seattle. Tried to build a normal life. Got married, divorced, got married again. That one stuck. Had a daughter. Bought a house in the suburbs. Everything normal people do. But I never forgot. Couldn't forget. Every time I saw news about disappearances in Alaska, I wondered. Every unexplained maritime incident. Every fishing boat that went silent. Were they just accidents? Or were the kushtaka still expanding? Still taking people? Task Force Pacifica was still operating. Blake stayed in touch. Not officially, just occasional emails, updates. The activity in Southeast Alaska had stabilized after 2004. Fewer incidents. The kushtaka seemed to have pulled back. Blake thought maybe they'd achieved whatever objective they'd had, learned what they needed, taken enough territory to be satisfied. Or maybe they were just being more careful, more subtle. Blake couldn't know for sure. Nobody could. I tried not to think about it, tried to focus on work and family and All the things normal people worry about. Mortgages, kids' education, retirement savings, the mundane concerns of civilian life. But sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd go online, search for reports, eyewitness accounts, anything that suggested kushtaka activity, and I'd find them, scattered across forums and paranormal websites and Tlingit community pages. People who'd seen something, heard something, lost someone. The government ignored them, dismissed them, but I knew better. I knew those reports were real, and I knew the kushtaka were still out there. The nightmares never stopped. 2 or 3 times a week, I'd dream about the Northern Star, about boarding that vessel and finding the crew, about their faces flickering, about Morrison's smile growing too wide, about the sounds of children crying from below deck. Sometimes I'd dream about the underwater cave where the real crew's bodies were kept. I'd be diving down, deeper and deeper, the light fading, and I'd see them. Dozens of bodies arranged in circles, and among them my own body, arranged with the others, dead, while something wearing my face walked around Seattle living my life. My wife knew something was wrong. I told her I had PTSD from my Coast Guard service, that I'd been involved in a traumatic rescue operation. That was true as far as it went. She tried to be understanding, suggested therapy, medication. I went through the motions but never told anyone the real truth. How do you explain to a therapist that you've seen shape-shifting otter men who can perfectly mimic humans, that you've spoken to them, been threatened by them, that you believe they're still out there, infiltrating human society? You don't. You take the pills, you do the breathing exercises, and you keep the truth locked inside where it slowly poisons you. Years passed. 2010, 2015, 2020. My daughter grew up. Started college. I got older. Grayer. Softer, the memories should have faded. But they didn't. If anything, they got stronger. More vivid. Like my brain was trying to make sure I never forgot. Then in 2022, something happened that brought it all back. I was at a coffee shop in Seattle. Pike Place market area. Touristy, crowded. I was meeting a client to discuss a contract. Standard business meeting, nothing unusual. I got there early, ordered coffee, sat down to wait. And that's when I saw him. Oliver Webb, sitting at a table across the coffee shop, drinking coffee, reading a newspaper, looking exactly like I remembered from the security footage Blake had shown me back in 2003. 20 years older, but unmistakably the same man. Or the same thing wearing that man's face. My blood turned to ice. I sat there frozen, watching. He hadn't noticed me, was just reading his paper, occasionally sipping his coffee, acting completely normal, completely human. But I knew what he was, what was wearing Oliver Webb's face. It had been 19 years since the Northern Star incident, and it was still here, still maintaining the disguise, still living among humans. How long could they maintain a human form? Indefinitely. Could they replace someone and just keep being them forever? The implications were staggering. I pulled out my phone, took a photo, tried to be subtle, but my hands were shaking. The thing that looked like Oliver Webb glanced up. Our eyes met. For just a second, its face changed. The proportions shifted. The eyes reflected light they shouldn't. The smile became too wide. Then it corrected itself. Back to human, back to perfect. But it had recognized me. I could see it in those eyes. Recognition, memory. It knew who I was, knew I'd been on the Northern Star, knew I'd seen what it really was. It stood up, started walking toward my table. Normal gait, normal movements. Nothing to suggest anything was wrong. Just a man coming to say hello to someone he recognized. I didn't wait. I grabbed my things and left, fast, pushed through the crowded coffee shop and out onto the street. I heard it call after me. "Hey, wait, don't I know you?" Oliver Webb's voice, perfect, friendly. Just a man trying to place a familiar face, nothing threatening, nothing wrong. But I ran anyway. Down Pike Street, into the market crowds. I didn't stop until I was blocks away. Didn't stop until I was in my car with the doors locked. Didn't stop shaking for an hour after that. It was in Seattle. The kushtaka were in Seattle. Not just in Alaska anymore. Not just in their territory, they were here, in major population centers, integrated into society. How many? How long had they been here? I called Blake immediately. He was retired by then, but still had contacts. Still monitored kushtaka activity when he could. "I just saw one," I told him. "In Seattle. Oliver Webb, the Northern Star crew. It's here." Silence on the line. Then, "You're sure?" "Positive. It recognized me. Blake, they're not just in Alaska anymore. They're expanding. Coming to cities. How many of them are here?" "I don't know. Task Force Pacifica shut down in 2018. Budget cuts. Official line was that the anomalous maritime phenomena had been explained through conventional means. So there's no official monitoring anymore." "That's insane. They're still out there, still learning, still replacing people." "I know. But the people who'd made the decision to acknowledge them, to track them, they're all retired or dead. The new generation doesn't believe, doesn't want to believe. It's easier to classify everything as fiction and move on." "What do I do?" "Nothing. You can't do anything. You report it officially, you'll be labeled crazy. You try to prove it, you'll draw attention to yourself, attention from them. Just stay away, don't engage, and for God's sake, don't go near the water." That should have been the end of it. I should have listened to Blake, should have stayed away. But I couldn't. I needed to know more, needed to understand what was happening. So I started watching. Not obviously, not in a way that would draw attention. But I started paying attention to people around Seattle, watching for anomalies, for faces that changed, for proportions that didn't quite match, for reflections in eyes that shouldn't be there. And I found them, not many, maybe 1 in 1,000, maybe less. But they were there, walking among us, shopping in stores, working in offices, living human lives, perfectly integrated, perfectly disguised. Unless you knew what to look for, unless you'd seen them before, then you could spot the tells, the moments when they forgot to blink for too long, the way their head tilted slightly wrong, the smile that lasted a fraction of a second too long. They were everywhere, and nobody else could see them. I started documenting, photos, videos, notes. I built a database, tracked movements, tried to understand patterns. It became an obsession. My wife noticed, asked what I was doing, why I was spending so much time on my computer, looking at security footage, following strangers. I told her it was a hobby, amateur detective work. She didn't buy it, but she stopped asking. We'd been married long enough that she knew when to give me space. But the truth was I was losing myself in this. The paranoia was taking over. Every stranger was potentially a kushtaka. Every normal person could be replaced at any moment. How would you even know? If they could perfectly mimic someone, learn their memories, know their relationships, how would anyone detect the replacement? You wouldn't. They'd just be gone. And something else would be living their life. And nobody would ever know. I started checking on my family constantly, calling my daughter, video chatting to see her face, looking for those tells. those moments of wrongness. She thought I was being overprotective, annoying dad checking in too much. She didn't know I was verifying she was still her. My wife, too. I'd watch her sleep, check her eyes in different lights, look for reflections that shouldn't be there. She caught me once, asked what the hell I was doing. I made up some excuse about watching her because she was beautiful. She didn't believe me, but what else could I say? Honey, I'm checking to make sure you're not a shape-shifting otter creature that replaced you. That's a fast track to divorce or psychiatric commitment. So I kept it inside, kept watching, kept documenting. And the more I documented, the more I saw. They were increasing in numbers. Slowly, carefully, but increasing. In 2023, I got an email from an account I didn't recognize. No subject line, just a message. We know you are watching us. We know you recognize us. This is not a threat. This is information. We are not your enemy. We are adapting to a world you have made dangerous for our kind. We do not wish conflict. We wish coexistence. But we will defend ourselves if necessary. Stop watching, stop documenting, live your life, or we will be forced to act. I should have been terrified, should have stopped immediately, but instead I responded. What did you do with the real people, the ones you replaced? Where are they? The response came within an hour. They are remembered. Their knowledge lives in us. They are not gone. They are transformed. We are not killers by choice. We are survivors. We take what we need to survive. Nothing more. You took 32 people from fishing vessels. You took Oliver Webb and made him into you. We took people who violated our waters, who threatened our existence. We adapted. We learned. We became. This is evolution. This is survival. You would do the same. You have done the same to us, to our kind, for 200 years. They weren't wrong. Humans had been pushing into their territory for centuries, killing otters for fur, destroying habitat, polluting waters. From their perspective, they were the ones under siege. We were the invaders. They were just adapting to survive. How many of you are there? I asked. Enough? Growing? Learning? Becoming? We are patient. We have time. You do not. Your civilization is brief, chaotic, destructive. We will outlast you. And when you are gone, we will still be here. The conversation ended there. No more responses. Just silence. But the message was clear. They weren't going away, weren't going to hide. They were here, integrating, preparing for a future where they might need to be human to survive. I should report this, should tell someone. But who? Task Force Pacifica doesn't exist anymore. The government doesn't believe. And I have no proof beyond my own observations and an email that could be from anyone. So I'm telling you, whoever is watching this, listening to this, I'm telling you what's really out there, what's really happening. The kushtaka are real. They're in Alaska. They're in Seattle. Probably in other coastal cities too. They look human, sound human, act human. But they're not, and they're not going away. I don't know what to do about it. Don't know if anything can be done. Maybe coexistence is the only option. Maybe Blake was right all along. You can't fight something you can't identify. Can't stop something that's integrated into the fabric of society. But people deserve to know. Deserve to understand that the world is stranger than they think. That there are things out there living among us, wearing faces that aren't theirs. The crew of the Northern Star deserved better. They deserved to be remembered for who they really were. Not as accidents, not as statistics, but as men who were taken by something ancient and intelligent and desperate to survive in a world that had no place for them. I'm 50 years old now, 21 years since the Northern Star incident, and I'm tired of watching, tired of documenting, tired of living in fear that every stranger might be something else, tired of checking my family for signs they've been replaced. I don't know how much longer I can do this, don't know what the end game is. But I needed to tell this story, needed to put it out there so that if something happens to me, if I disappear or turn up drowned or just stop existing, someone will know why. The kushtaka are real, they're intelligent, they're adapting, and they're already here. Watch the waters. Watch the people around you. Watch for eyes that reflect light they shouldn't. Watch for smiles that last too long. Watch for movements that are just slightly off. And if you hear children crying near the water, run. Don't investigate, don't try to help. Just run. Because they're still learning, still adapting, still becoming more like us every day. And by the time you realize something's wrong, by the time you notice the face looking back at you isn't quite right, it'll already be too late. My name is Tyler Chadwick. I was a petty officer in the United States Coast Guard. In October 2003, I boarded a vessel called the Northern Star. The crew was still on the ship. They looked human, they sounded human, but they weren't human anymore. And one day, maybe someone will board a ship and find me. Still on board, still walking around, still wearing my face, and they won't be able to tell the difference either.